The NFL schedule release was last night. All the teams came out, released their videos or whatever. The best one is the Chargers. They did this whole Sims thing. If you haven't had an opportunity to go watch that, you should. Now, let's get to the Colts schedule. The Colts are only playing in one primetime game this year, Week 11 against the Jets. That is Sunday Night Football. I thought that they'd have one more primetime game, considering that people seem to really like Anthony Richardson this year. So I thought that they'd have one more against, the Texans or the Jags. It's a divisional matchup. The public seems to generally be high on CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence as well as Anthony Richardson. Outside of that, not overly surprised. Like before they released the schedule, I'd already cleared my fall Sunday afternoons starting at 1 o'clock because I just figured that that's where the Colts would be at, because as of right now, the public, the national media views the Colts as a very boring franchise, and boring franchises play at 1 o'clock, not on national television. And look, last night I spent way too much time doing what everybody does when the NFL schedule is released. You grab your favorite team schedule and you work through and you mark off wins and losses. That's what a lot of people do. That is not what I do. I like to put games into three separate categories. Okay, so I've got a should win category, a might win category, and a won't win category, right? So it helps me establish a baseline number of wins and losses. It also provides the range at which the Colts record should fall into, right? I also expect every team to go around 500 in divisional play, because no matter how good or bad your division is, division games are always tougher, right? So let's start in this should win category. This category is pretty self-explanatory. This is all the games that the Colts should win. Will they win all of them? Probably not, because this is the NFL, and the best thing about the NFL is the parity, right? We don't know who's going to win from week to week, right? For example, the Colts lost to the New Orleans Saints last year. And the year before that, the Colts lost to the Washington Commanders. If I had been on the air during that time, I would have classified both of those games as should-win games. But it's the NFL, and teams don't win every single game that they should. If they did, then Vegas wouldn't be doing as well as it is, right? So the Colts' first should-win game of the season comes in Week 3 against the Chicago Bears. Okay, I love Caleb Williams as much as anyone. Okay, and I think he's going to be an absolute stud. But it's going to be early in the season. Therefore, it'll be early in Caleb Williams' career. There's always an adjustment period for every rookie in every sport, right? We saw it with Caitlin Clark and her first game against the Sun on Tuesday night. We're going to see it again tonight because she's playing another game tonight. And so, it just takes rookies a certain amount of time to adjust, right? She's probably going to continue to be bad early in the season, talking about Caitlin Clark, just like a lot of rookies in every sport. With this being said, I expect Caleb Williams to struggle early because there's just a difference between playing college football and playing in the NFL. Because they're catching the Bears so early in the season, the Colts should win their game against the Bears. Colts' second should-win game of the season comes in Week 11 when they play the Jets on Sunday Night Football on the road. The Jets are simply not a good football team. The fact that they got 6 primetime games this year, I think, is pretty absurd. But hey, I guess that's what happens when you have Aaron Rodgers on your team. They just throw you into primetime games because that's just kind of the way that it is, right? By Week 11, the Colts rookies should have settled into things to a point where they can contribute at high levels. I think Shane Steichen is a much better coach than Robert Saleh. Because of that, they should win this game. I don't think that the Jets have a ton of weapons. I just don't think that the Jets are going to be very good this year. This is a game that the Colts should win. Colts' third should-win game of the season comes in Week 13 when they play the Patriots. The Patriots might be the worst team in the NFL this year. They have one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They have a rookie head coach. They're likely going to be playing either a rookie quarterback in Drake May, or they're going to play Jacoby Brissett, who's a career backup in the NFL. On top of all of that, they don't have very many weapons. Okay? So I have no faith whatsoever in the New England Patriots. On top of that as well, if the Colts lose to the Pats, I will go crazy because the Patriots just aren't a good football team, right? And then the Colts' fourth and final should-win game of the season comes in week 17 when they play the New York Giants. Same idea here as the Patriots. The Giants roster isn't very good. Daniel Jones isn't a very good quarterback. The Giants don't have very many weapons. But to be fair to the Giants, I do think that Brian Daboll is a good football coach. But that roster is so bad, I don't think it's going to matter. The Colts are just a better roster with a more competent head coach. Okay, like the baseline for the Colts wins this year is 4. They should win at least 4 football games this year. Okay, like they should beat the Bears in week 3. They should beat the Jets in week 11. They should beat the Pats in week 13. And they should beat the Giants in week 17. Okay, like those seem like 4 wins you can put on the board before the season even starts. And that's honestly a decent number of games that the Colts should win given how average this team was last year. Now let's move into the won't win category. What are the games that, when looking at the schedule, you can just chalk them up as losses? Okay. This is, like I said, for the last one, pretty self-explanatory. These are all the games that the Colts should not win. Will they lose all of them? Probably not, because this is the NFL where parity is king. Okay. For example, the Colts won on the road against the Ravens last year. That would have been a game that I would have classified as a won't win. The year before that, the Colts beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That would have been a game that I would have classified as a won't win game. All right. And so the Colts' first won't win game of the season comes in week 10 when the Colts play the Bills. I don't care how bad the Bills roster is. I refuse to pick a team led by a quarterback that threw 84 passes last year to beat a team led by Josh Allen. Just refuse to do it. Okay, if I'm wrong about Richardson and he ends up being much better than I'm expecting for him to be in year 2, then the Colts should have a chance. But I'm expecting Richardson to be above average. I don't think he's going to be great. I don't think he's going to be terrible either. But you need a superstar at quarterback to beat guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And the Colts just don't have that. They just don't. So chalk up that week 10 game against the Bills as a loss. The Colts' second won't win game of the season comes in week 12 against the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are potentially the best team in the NFC. That's a team that is more than capable of going on a run to the Super Bowl, right? Like that's just what they are. Jared Goff has been really good under Ben Johnson, right? The Lions offensive coordinator who is somehow, some way not a head coach yet. Right. The Lions are also going to be much better on defense. They went out in free agency because, believe it or not, Chris Ballard, you can go and get good players in free agency. The Lions went out and they added a couple good defensive pieces. They drafted the defensive side of the ball pretty well on top of that. And those are the only 2 games that coming into the season, I feel like the Colts have no chance of winning, which isn't very many. Every other game is incredibly winnable. Okay, week 10, I don't think that they can beat Josh Allen. I don't think that that's an absurd take. Then in week 12, I don't think they can beat arguably the best team in the NFC in the Detroit Lions. That's it. So that gives us a Colts baseline of 2 losses on the season, right? And look, it's obviously going to be more than that, but it's going to be at least that many, okay? Every other game on their schedule is incredibly winnable. Now we get to the might win games. Every divisional game for every team, no matter how good or how bad, divisional games are all, in my book, put down as might wins. Okay, I just kind of I pencil everyone in to go 500 in their division because divisional games are hard. They are, no matter how good your team is, no matter how bad your opponent is. I expect everyone to go around 500 in their divisions because those are the teams that know you the best. Right? Like no matter how well your team is playing, you know that your divisional opponents are going to be ready for you. So I put every divisional game down as a might win, right? They all tend to be toss-ups. So if the Colts can finish it around 500 in divisional play, I would call that a success. Right? Now, on to the other games. There are 5 games in this season that are going to dictate how we feel about the Colts. Right, so outside of the divisional games, which are 6, the must-win games, the should-win games, which there's 4 of those, and the won't-win games, there are 2 of those. There are 5 games left. All right, and if I'm right on the Colts' 4 should-wins, if I'm right on the 2 games that the Colts are going to lose, and if they go 3-3 in divisional games, that puts the Colts at 7-5 on the season. Okay, so these other 5 games are going to play a huge role in how we look at the Colts. If they go 5-0, we look at the Colts as a 12-5 team that probably wins the division. They go 4-1, that's 11-6, 3-2. That gets them to 10-7. That probably earns you a wild card spot, right? So these other tough toss-up non-divisional games are going to play a huge role in the Colts' success this season. And the first one we see, the first might win game of the season, comes in week 2 against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. Jordan Love was great last year. I think Matt LaFleur is a good head coach. Early in the season, though, I think the Colts are going to have an advantage. People haven't seen a lot of Anthony Richardson, and so they don't fully know what to expect. They don't know how to fully prep for him, which that very much bodes well for the Colts and a coach in Shane Steichen, who is, I think, one of the best game planners and one of the best play callers in the sport. So I like the Colts' chances early because teams just don't know what to expect, right? Especially teams like the Packers that play in the NFC. Okay, like this is a very winnable game for the Colts, but Packers are a good team. That's why it's a might-win game. It is on the road at Lambeau Field. Good news, earlier in the season, so the Colts aren't going to be playing in the snow or anything crazy like that. That first important game of the year that the Colts need to win comes in week 2 against the Green Bay Packers. The Colts' second non-divisional might-win game of the season comes in week 4 against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. I have no idea what to expect from the Steelers. Is Russell Wilson going to be the starter? Is Justin Fields going to be the starter? I don't know. Either way, like neither one of those guys really scare me, right? Like when I first saw the game, I was like, oh, this is a should-win game. But you have to remember that Mike Tomlin is the head football coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? And look, he's one of the best coaches in the sport. There's a reason why he's never had a losing season, right? In his entire coaching career, no matter how good or bad his quarterback was or anything like that. And he's going to have the Steelers ready, and they're going to be good defensively, right? Like that's just who the Steelers are. And the Steelers went out and they picked up a couple good defensive pieces in the offseason, some through the draft, some through free agency. For example, they went out and they got Patrick Queen. That's a fast, physical, run-stopping linebacker from the Ravens. And because the Steelers are going to have a lack of elite quarterback play, means that the Colts have a chance to beat the Steelers in week 4, but it's really hard for me to bet against the guy in Mike Tomlin. The Colts' third non-divisional might-win game of the season comes in week 7 against the Miami Dolphins. And I think that when a lot of Colts fans see this game, I think that they chalk it up as a loss. Look, full disclosure, grew up a Miami Dolphins fan, still pull for them. Just part of who I am. Here's the truth on the Dolphins. The Dolphins had to let a lot of players go due to cap reasons after last year. Also, this is not a very physical football team down in Miami. And I expect the Colts to be very physical this season. Okay, like with a guy and Anthony Richardson who can obviously run the ball and one of the best running backs in the league, I expect the Colts to be physical. I expect them to push teams around, and the Dolphins are 1,000% a team that you can push around. So in week 7, when the Dolphins come up here to play at Lucas Oil Stadium, if I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts pushed the Dolphins around at home and won. I also wouldn't be surprised, though, if the Colts secondary couldn't defend these Dolphin receivers. That, to me, is why this is a toss-up might-win game. Third might-win game of the season comes in week 7 against the Dolphins. The Colts' fourth non-divisional might-win game of the season comes in week 9 against the Vikings. This is entirely dependent upon J.J. McCarthy because I think he's a complete wild card. I have all the faith in the world in Kevin O'Connell to turn him into a good quarterback, but no rookie quarterback is a guarantee, no matter how good the head coach is. So if McCarthy isn't that guy, then this could easily turn into a should-win game for the Colts. I would lean Colts on that one before the season starts, but I want to see what J.J. McCarthy looks like at that point in the season before I switch it one way or the other. The Colts' fifth and final non-divisional might-win game of the season comes in week 5 against the Broncos. I thought this was going to be another should-win game for the Colts, right? Because I don't think that the Broncos are going to be very good this year, and the Colts have a bye in week 14. I was like, oh, they have a bye, getting ready for a team that's not very good? Pencil it in as a should-win. But then I realized the Broncos also have a bye in week 14, and as look, the Broncos went 8-9 last year with one of the worst rosters in the NFL, especially because of Russell Wilson and just how bad he was. And playing Sean Payton coming off of a bye week is just never fun. It's just not. It's hard to count out a coach like him coming off of a bye week. Like, the Broncos are going to be extremely prepped and ready for the Colts. In addition to that, I think Shane Steichen is going to have these guys ready as well. I think that the talent of the Colts roster it could very easily overwhelm the Broncos. That's how bad that Broncos roster is. I'm talking about the Colts talent overwhelming them. Like, that's how terrible of a roster that they have. So that is the fifth and final non-divisional might win game of the season. So after having gone through all of that, the Colts should finish somewhere between 7-10 and 12-5. And those 5 games that I just went through are going to determine whether or not the Colts win the division, whether they make the playoffs, or if they have a failure of a season, right? We're going to track these games all year long. We're going to see if I'm right or not on these should win games. We're going to see if I'm right or not on these probable losses games, right? September 8th, week 1 against the Texans cannot get here soon enough.